Marco Reus. Daniel Malen! Wonderful!
Fantastic from Reus. Jude Bellingham, that's excellent. Jude Bellingham, this is absolutely brilliant. Jude Bellingham! Absolutely magnificent.
Reina, brilliant from the American. Just like that.
Graceful, salute turn for Anthony Modeste.
Not a bad idea! And there it is for Coco for Borussia Dortmund. The long wait is over. Unbridled joy in the Revier Derby.
Hey, welcome back to another week of the BVB podcast. My name's Jake, hanging with Carver, as always. How are you doing on this typical Dortmund week?
Well, I thought you were going to say it's a beautiful day in St. Louis.
It is a beautiful day in St. Louis.
Very pretty here, but yeah, very gloomy in the Dortmund world. Absolutely. How are you doing?
I mean, even though like coming off a win, it didn't necessarily feel like it. I'm glad we got a win. We're going to talk about it. But to add to the mixed emotions of that is Dortmund, me right now, so we're recording this on Thursday night, and I just left St. Louis City SC. If you don't know, Carver and I live in St. Louis. We're getting an MLS team real soon. We signed Berkey as our goalkeeper, and I was literally like 20 minutes ago 5 feet from Berkey.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing an event, and he was like in this side room, but it was like a glass wall, and I'm just sitting there like literally 5 feet from him, and I have to leave to go do a Dortmund podcast. Like the irony. So
it's a missed opportunity. We're gonna have to reach out to him soon. I imagine maybe we can get him on the show. Who knows?
So that was weird. But yeah, along with this week. So obviously we are going to recap the game against Union Berlin on Saturday, and then we got to talk about Hannover. Yesterday, when we're recording on a Wednesday. We're going to go through some injury updates. We got some Twitter questions we're going to jump into, and then of course preview the upcoming games on the weekend, and then we have Champions League back next week. So let's start with Berlin.
Yeah, let's start with Berlin. Man, this is just such a dreadful week of fixtures for Dortmund. So we line up with a back three. If I'm not wrong, the first time we've lined up or started with a back three this season, and it's a really strange time to just now try to start something like that. I'm not really sure what Terzic's line of thinking was there. Not really sure why he would want to try to put something out as risky as this against the best defensive side in the league, of course away as well. And we know that we're pretty vulnerable in a handful of different areas in defense. And I was just very confused. Zero creativity in this lineup as well to add to that. I mean, you have anchors in the midfield and then a box-to-box midfielder in Bellingham. And you have two young, similar strikers up top in Moukoko and Adeyemi. But besides that, again, no creativity, no one to really drive the ball forward and have, a good sense of vision and is able to, pick out passes. Of course, Bellingham is someone who is pretty solid in those areas, but is not necessarily an attacking midfielder. He's again, more of a box-to-box, and we don't have that kind of vision and creativity in the midfield in this game. So yet another bad mistake from Terzic again.
Yeah, so going through the lineup, we had Kobel back in goal, which we'll talk about that,
Yikes.
Unfortunately. I mean, I think he definitely redeemed himself, which we'll talk about too. But so we had Schlotterbeck, Hummels, and Sule. Back three, like you mentioned. Then we had Özcan, Chan, and Bellingham kind of in the middle, and then our wingers, Guerrero and Meunier out wide. And then we saw Moukoko and Adeyemi up top, like you mentioned, really young, kind of inexperienced, which I think played a big role in this, especially when we went 2-0 down. But obviously the creativity was lacking. It's like, I feel like we were really missing someone like Brandt or Royce, obviously, but he was on the bench and he's still coming back from his injury. And obviously we didn't see him in Hannover either. But I would like to think with those middle three, like what we've seen before with the 4-3-3, like having control in the middle. Yeah. I think that was a big miss too. Like we couldn't string anything together.
No.
Not even, it's not even that we were lacking maybe a more creative role up top, but like through the midfield, all of our passes like from out the back, whether it was coming from Chan, Bellingham gave the ball away a lot too, or the guys in the back, like it was just, we couldn't push anything forward.
No, we couldn't even really get out of our our third and the middle third. There was no creativity or lack of idealism whatsoever, even in our build-up. I'm not even talking about getting into the attacking third. I'm just strictly talking about just breaking that initial line of press from Berlin. I mean, it was very stagnant pretty much the entire game. But, I mean, early on, you could maybe get a little smash and grab from the header from Chan and then, maybe tip the game in your favor and see how that pans out. But an awful header from him. And that was pretty much the only chance we had this game.
And even before that, like Berlin was looking really like they already had a couple chances. They started really strong. Like we potentially could have had a goal there, but that was like our one chance. And then very quickly they got the goal too.
Yeah, they put on tremendous pressure early on, and I think they also realized early on that we were not. That Kobel was just looking shaky. I mean, right before his slip, he also was spilling the ball on that very easy save, and that's just very out of his character and unlike Kobel. And I think Berlin, again, was kind of smelling blood in the water there. And we were like, well, of course, again, they're looking at the lineup and they're thinking, they're not going to have much of someone to help progress the ball and have some vision in the midfield and, break our initial lines of pressing. And on top of that, now the goalkeeper is lacking confidence and the whole team is lacking confidence in general. So it was easy for them to just keep that pressure on and just pin us back. And we had no answer whatsoever. It was Terzic and the team being reactive again rather than being proactive.
For this game, why? Like, I know you don't have the answers for me, Carver, but I get. I mean, we had the question last week, like, do we need a winger to break down teams like this? And it was a very interesting tactic to just change up our tactics completely. Like, I have no idea what the game plan here was. I guess because if we put you could look at Moukoko and Adeyemi and say, maybe we're going to try to get something on the break and transition, but this isn't the team to do that against. Like, they're doing that to us. So I just don't understand what was going on in Terzic's mind to set up like this. It just, like, do you think what he was maybe trying to do? Like, I just don't understand it at all. Like, why, like, we haven't seen this formation. I mean, last season we were calling for a back three a lot. But
yeah, I still think there's definitely positives in that system, but again, this is not the time to try that if you haven't lined up for this from the start against a side like this. And at Berlin against the best defensive side, I mean, they're going to pick you apart, and that's exactly what happened.
Let's talk about Kobel, which of course we had the goal. I mean, we mentioned it, but in the 8th minute, ball back to Kobel, who he kind of missed it. He slid trying to kick the ball. Bounces out. Do you think he could have done? I mean, at the point, it's going to be a goal, but he kind of had some time to make an effort.
Yeah, I know the commentators were saying he could have just immediately gotten up and at least made a race out of it. And I think that's a fair assessment, I guess, early on. But once you see the replay, it looks like there's pretty much going to be no chance to begin with. But yeah. Again, right before that, though, it just looked like Kobel was off mentally. I think that was arguably the worst performance of his career so far.
I think he said that too.
I don't know if something was going on, maybe outside or off the pitch, and he was just distracted. But it was just really unfortunate. And if it wasn't already a mountain to climb in this game, now you're really got a long way back.
Yeah, even if because we've seen it before, like other teams kind of have more chances than us be able to hang on and maybe get a goal. I mean, the Werder Bremen game was. That obviously didn't end well. Sorry to take you back to Germany, Carver. But that was a kind of a similar game where we weren't creating much, and then we happened to get a goal right at the half. But this was the opposite because they got a quick goal. That was a mistake on our end. And then, not too much longer, they scored their second goal in the 21st minute, which was a terrible giveaway by Adeyemi, which just, that was the story of this half, like just no control, giving the ball away, and then being super up for it and all over the place with their pressure. Like, I think there was a crazy stat that they ran like 15 kilometers more than us in this game. Like,
throughout the whole game too. Yeah, it wasn't just in one half. And I want to go back to, you mentioned control, and Terzic has said now, we mentioned the past few weeks, Terzic has said, this happened a handful of times this season now where it's frustrating, where we quote unquote, we control the game, but we're not getting the result we want. And I don't know if I'm paraphrasing there, but he did mention that we do control the game. And every game that we've lost this season so far, we have not controlled the game whatsoever. So I don't really know what he was trying to get out there. I mean, Berlin was dictating the tempo of this game from first whistle to the end of the game, just completely the entire match. We could not match their tempo whatsoever. We could not dictate the game. We were playing their game rather than ours, and it was just really difficult to get really anything going. Again, very passive, very static looking. Even after conceding the first goal, you would think it's like, oh shit, all right, wake the up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And get your head out of your asses and let's get reorganized and go out and play. But just right after conceding that first goal, we just didn't look like we cared much. Just deers and headlights and not really caring and not putting the effort in to really try to claw one back early. And they punished us again, not even 13 minutes after that with the long shot. Mm-hmm. And by then it looked like it was pretty much game over. Even though it's only 2-0 down, it looked like we were pretty much down for the count. It's the 1-2 knockout punch.
It just how the game was going so far, so early. And I know we didn't predict a win, or we didn't predict a loss or even a draw last week. I think we both predicted a win. And obviously Union Berlin, like they're top of the league. We're 10 match days in. They're top of the league, very deservedly so.
Yeah.
We saw them. Did they draw Bayern? I don't remember if they drew. I think they beat Bayern.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've been playing great, and
excuse me, they did draw. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why I thought they won.
It's okay, but like they've been playing well, and it's not a fluke with them. Like they've been. This is what they've been like working towards. Like they've been pretty good the last few years, and they've been growing and building the system, and they have players who are just they know what they're doing. They're a solid unit, and we are not. Like we're very fractured, I guess. Like in kind of people doing their own things, and like we don't have our we look like, I mean, clearly we don't know what we're doing all the time, especially when the formation or the seeming strategy like goes out the door. Like, but they're just very grooved in what they do, and they are a good team. So we can't take that away from them. This wasn't all us being bad, but the bad thing is like I wouldn't have been as upset if it was a tight game where we had a lot of chances and we went there and lost because they're a good team, and that's a tough place to go. We talked about their atmosphere. Like it's just a tough stadium, and their fans are up for it. Obviously, especially when they're playing a big team and they're top of the league and they're trying to hang on to that, they're going to be up for it. And so it's just so disappointing to see how we played and the lack of control and the lack of, I don't know, anything good. There just was nothing good.
No, not really at all. And again, it was tough for the team to crawl themselves out of this one at halftime. I mean, I also mentioned last week too, for the Sevilla game, maybe like 30 or 33 minutes went by, and I looked at the clock and I was like, damn, we completely wasted a half hour there, and we don't look like we're getting going really whatsoever. I mean, I don't know, really, we wasted an entire third of the game, and we haven't really tried anything. And it was the exact same thing here too. I don't think we had, besides that Chan chance, we didn't have anything going forward until 35 minutes in, and that came from Moukoko. I mean, I really love that he doesn't need a lot for him to do something with the ball. Mm-hmm. That's what we should be looking towards to support him more. Because again, if he can make chances out of almost nothing at times, it should be helping our attack a lot more. Because it's with Modeste, it's non-existent in that department. But in general, though, I mean, Moukoko aside, just could not even get out of our third half the time. They had us pinned back and could not control the game whatsoever. And we were thinking at halftime, I was looking online too, it wasn't just me, but the fan base in general is obviously thinking we need an entire flip of personnel in this second half if we want any sort of a chance of even getting a tie in this game. And sure enough, Terzic did react, but again, it's the bad thing of him reacting rather than being proactive. And again, he's going to have to try to claw himself back into this game and get a result out of this from his mistakes. Yeah. I mean, he has to go out and earn his paycheck and actually prove his tactical competence because, again, it's on him. I mean, even though Terzic said in a post-match interview that the goals were conceded not from tactical mishaps but individual errors, I mean, while that may technically be true, the reason we weren't able to get back into the game in the first place were those tactical mishaps.
Yeah, and just going back to like going 2 goals down and Adeyemi and Moukoko up top with no other creative, without like a Brandt or Royce in there or someone like that. That is a lot on those two very young, very inexperienced players to kind of be the ones who like lead the line or like be that option. Mm-hmm. When nothing is getting created out of the midfield or from out the back, like that's so much on those two guys. And like as soon as we went 2-0 down, it's like, well, these guys aren't going to be able to pull us out of it. They just don't have enough. Like Adeyemi's fast. Lukaku's done some great things, and he's like technically amazing. And I mean, I love what he did in the Hannover game, but that's so much to put on those two young guys who don't have the experience, and they're not even like getting fed the balls that they need to run onto it or anything. Like, it just wasn't there, and I don't know. So I wish that he almost would have made a sub immediately. Maybe going two goals down, or at the 30th minute. No, why wait till halftime?
I would agree with that, especially in this day and age where you have 5 substitutions instead of 3. I completely agree with that. I think we needed a reaction quicker than just waiting for halftime. But halftime you have 3 substitutions in Royce, Malen, and Brandt. Again, that's going to bring a lot more creativity on the field, a lot more of an attacking options. But I mean, Bates kind of just pissed away the second half too. I mean, it was a mountain to climb, and the players didn't really look up for it. And Berlin sure as hell looked up for it, and they're not going to really give anything back. I mean, we had, maybe that half chance towards the end of the game with the quick 1-2 combinations of Brandt and Royce, but Royce just sometimes, again, so frustrating in front of goal where he's just not shooting. He takes that one extra step to get around the keeper, and by then it's too late. I mean, you got to fire one off and get it on target. I imagine at that kind of range with his ability, the keeper's not going to be able to catch it. So it's going to be spilled, and maybe hopefully someone's there for a tap-in, or at least contesting and keeping the pressure on, but nothing really to show for.
So I'll be honest, I did not watch the second half. Not because
That's fair.
Because I turned it off and was like, this is bullshit. I don't care to watch.
Yeah.
But it's because this was a game I couldn't watch live, and I've had terrible luck. Like the last maybe 2 weeks, game weeks, I've seen spoilers. And so this game got spoiled for me. And I saw the result 2-0, and as soon as I watched the whole first half, but I know they're not going to come back. And I did see the changes we made, and so I was planning on watching it because I wanted to see how that would have changed us progressing, and to see if the play was better. But just knowing the result and knowing I didn't have a ton of time to try to watch that, I was like, not worth it. I'll let Carver talk about it, but.
I mean, there's not much else to report that I remember. I mean, I'm trying to block this out from my memory myself, really. It was a really dreadful game. You and I both were pretty optimistic here and thinking that we could go and maybe get a result out of this. But again, this team is so proficient at not building any sort of momentum whatsoever after big results. I mean,
anytime you're optimistic with Dortmund, just get ready to be real sad.
Yeah.
If you haven't figured it out already.
Again, it's slim pickings on the bench still, don't get me wrong, but you're slowly having players being incorporated back in. At least you have some options here and there, and just, again, we're not building any sort of momentum right now. I mean, you get a result against Bayern, one of the best results we've had in years. You expect us to go out and beat Sevilla, and then we have the momentum and picking up form behind us, and then you could try to get a result out of Berlin, but no, just completely stagnant, very passive. Again, just didn't really look like we cared much.
Before we move on, I did want to talk about Özcan coming off that half instead of Chan, because we've seen this a couple times, and every time I'm like, why are you taking him off and leaving? Because it's been specifically Chan has been left on, or it's maybe a swap for him. I think we saw it against Man City. Maybe we saw it against Berlin, and granted the Berlin result was better. Comparing, putting those players side by side, and from what we've seen, and I love Özcan. I think he's been such an underrated signing. It never makes sense to me when he comes off. I don't know if it's, and he has been playing a lot, so maybe it is he genuinely wants to rest him. But in I think a game and maybe because maybe he saw this game's gone. But I think to keep Chan on, was there anything in that second half that you saw better from Chan than what we saw from Özcan in the first half, or was it all bad? I don't know. Yeah. It seems weird to me.
It wasn't great from Chan whatsoever. I mean, I think the few reasons, but it didn't really come down to form of either player. But like you mentioned already, I would imagine rest, and Terzic maybe knows that this game might be a little bit too far away for them to reach. But also Özcan was on a yellow as well. Okay. So you don't want to risk going down a player whenever the game is already very, very difficult. So
I mean, that could be a lot of it too, because as far as him coming off yellow cards, because that's what we see now in the Champions League. He's going to miss this Champions League game, and maybe that was the call against Man City the first time. I'm not really too sure that could be a big part of it,
but yeah, just overall, I mean, very disappointing. And if we didn't mention already, but we had 77% of possession this game. and Berlin still just ran us up and down the field. I mean, I haven't seen a team dominate possession this much and still do so little with it all game. Again, it wasn't even a matter of just, not creating much in the final third. We could not get out of our half whatsoever.
You want to move on?
Yeah, I do.
We better result, but going into, so we had the Pokal match against Hannover, ended up winning 2-0. But obviously going into this game, when coming off that last one, it's like, okay, cool. How are we going to play? I'm not optimistic at all. Like, I'm just expecting the worst. And like going in, if you're like looking at this matchup, Hannover's a good team. Like they're like aggressive. I didn't realize how big they are. I mean, they have that one dude who's like 6'5", but they're a big, aggressive team. I think they're 5th in the 2 Bundesliga, but they're number 1 in tackles. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like they came out strong real quick. And this was just like a real tough game right off the bat.
It was, and also, I mean, even before that, Royce was not available for this one. He'd be someone that obviously would be huge for this kind of game, but apparently, I guess Berlin came too soon for him, and hence he had another slight setback after featuring for not even, I get 1 half against Berlin, so that was really disappointing. And at the beginning of the game, again, a lot of it comes down to not defending well whatsoever on set pieces yet again. I mean, it wasn't just early on, though, either. I mean, this entire game, every single set piece, we looked extremely vulnerable, despite the size and quality in our squad. I mentioned already, I think it was last week, but I mean, to have players like Meunier, Sule, I mean, of course, Modeste wasn't in the side this game, but you still have those 2 players, and Chan, too, is a big guy. Schlotterbeck. Yeah. It just did not mark well whatsoever. I mean, Schlotterbeck, again, also was not marking that well, and just no one seems to really try to care on these set pieces.
Yeah, we'll get the lineup real quick before we go further in. But Kobel back in goal, Guerrero left back, Schlotterbeck, Sule, and Meunier. So we're back to 4 at the back. We had Oschan and Chan in the middle, and then Malen, Brandt, Hazard, and Moukoko. So definitely a rotated lineup. We saw Malen come back in. Hazard come in, which we haven't seen him in a while, and then obviously Bellingham got to rest on the bench.
Yeah.
So going into this, I was like, oh, I mean, also just seeing Sule like be the captain, I was like, oh, like kind of weird that we're dropping that much already. I mean, because Hummels was in there, Hummels was on the bench, Royce wasn't playing, and then Bellingham is our 3rd captain. So I guess Sule is number 4. But definitely rotate a lineup. And going into this, I was like, obviously, people need rest, and Bellingham needs rest.
Yeah.
But that did not put a lot of like. I don't know. It worried me a lot.
No, yeah.
How heavily rotated it was. I understand it, but it's like I knew it was going to be a tough game. So.
Yeah, I mean, and if the team already didn't lack enough confidence, my God, looking at this one, Malen and Hazard alone, those 2 have just done kind of dick in the last several months. So. I mean, and you mentioned already Hannover came out to play. Every team comes out to play. They're licking their lips looking at Dortmund right now, and they realize that we're not in any sort of form, and we are lacking an extremely big amount of confidence. So they came right at us right out of the gates and had a handful of chances. I mean, we should have been 1-0 down 5 minutes in.
Yeah,
and thankfully, Moukoko having a very strange goal almost. It wasn't even Moukoko, it was an own goal. I guess after the game, I think it was deemed as an own goal. Completely against the run of play, might I add. But it's a great flick from Brandt and a good pass from Hazard to keep the attack alive. And again, Moukoko doing a lot out of basically nothing, and he's making a lot of chances out of very little. And his movement off the ball, too, for his age is sublime. So good on Moukoko for netting one there.
He looked great this game.
I wouldn't say great. I personally don't. I think he could do a lot better in a lot of aspects. I mean, just a few minutes after that, I thought he was a little selfish in attack, which was there was a giveaway from their one of their midfielders. The name's escaping me, but I think Moukoko could have kept his head up. But that's really one of his biggest weaknesses is just he kind of gets tunnel vision, and he's not really looking to have much of any sort of play with the attacking line in front of him. But anyway,
I mean, I understand. I mean, I don't think this was a great game overall. So yeah, if you don't want to say like he looked great, but he can still like create a chance out of almost nothing, which was what we needed, and it's like kept the pressure on even like against the run of play, which is good. And obviously there was a deflection and went in, but when I just saw that, I was like, that was the craziest shot ever. And obviously it was a deflection, but I kind of lost my mind for a second until I saw the replay. It was deflected in, but goal in the 11th minute.
Again, completely against the run of play, and now we're finally slowly starting to grow into the game pretty well for like 15 or so minutes after that. I think we started to get in the swing of things a little bit more, but Hannover just kind of grabbing the game by the balls towards the end of the first half, and again, dictating the tempo and really just making us look like a Division III side almost at times. I mean, Kobel, God, the amount of shots they had, and Kobel just in the first half alone. Again, from Kobel going from like arguably the worst performance of his career. Oh, easily.
Oh, like at half.
Easily.
2-3-1, I guess, since we got a goal. But
and again, Kobel just completely bailing us out all game long and going from arguably the worst performance of his career to putting on an absolute show and completely carrying us. I mean, the man was dancing on his head.
He had 7 saves.
It's ridiculous. And how many of those, crazy. I was going to say, and it's not like they were easy either. They were all crazy.
They were all like extended.
And every time he saved one too, the camera cuts to him and he's just kind of looking like, this is what I owe the club because of my performance last game. And that's how you do it. That's how you bounce back, man. I cannot get enough of Kobel. I love the man so much.
I did want to touch on that a little bit because you typically see this hit, like his aggressiveness and his excitement when he makes a big save. And he goes crazy, or like if someone makes a big defensive tackle. But you could tell like he's still struggling, and amazing for him to come
mentally,
out. Mentally, but like after every save, he was very stoked.
He's very,
like, and kind of like, you can kind of see him like getting back into it, but also he's like, I don't want to over celebrate or get overly hyped because I'm still remembering what happened last game.
Yeah, staying alert and staying focused. I love it, man. I absolutely loved it. And yeah, Kobel's completely bailing us out all game. Like you said, we should have been down by the end of the first half, and even coming out of the second half as well. Those first 10 minutes of the second half, Hannover had 3 big chances or so right out of the gates.
And like again, first minute they had a chance.
I think it was first minute. I mean, Chen almost had an own goal there in the opening seconds of the second half. And then I think again right in the 49th, and then I think it was the 51st or 52nd, they had a nice switch of play and then just squared it right across goal. And Schlotterbeck and Sule were just again deer in headlights, and how they didn't score there is beyond me. Again, completely lack of any sort of organization or awareness in that back line.
Yeah, I did want to mention, so Taylor Twellman was calling this game, which I have so many mixed feelings about Taylor Twellman. And he's a St. Louis guy. Like I think, and he's done a lot when...
I work with his dad a good amount, actually, funny enough.
Don't tell him. But when he commentates, he can say just some of the funniest stuff, or so drastic and dramatic, and but like he's done a lot with St. Louis recently, and so like I'm like I like him, but sometimes he just says stuff that seems so extreme. Like, dude, you're just saying that to be crazy. But in this game at halftime, coming on in the half, he was talking about our depth, and we have this great depth for Dortmund, and I could just kind of tell that, like, man, you have not been paying attention to Dortmund at all. And the other commentator, I wish we could have the normal Bundesliga commentators on this, but because it was just like what the stuff they were saying the depth, because we had Bellingham on the bench, but that's a rest and rotation thing, and then Reina, but after that, nothing. And then what we see that lack of depth, or what they want to say our amazing depth we have on the bench, when Meunier gets injured, and who do we bring in? Well, we don't have another right back to bring in, so we had to bring in Hummels and push Sule at the back, and that's our amazing depth that Taylor Twellman was bragging about.
Yeah, and what's funny too is like for how bang average at best of a commentator Twellman is, I mean, he's not even close to really the worst. There's a lot more American commentators who are just horrendous. I mean, Casey Keller is one of them.
I like his snarky remarks sometimes, but when he was talking about us having depth, I'm like, dude,
not even close.
Like, can you tell me any of those other players on the bench? Like, do you know? Have you seen them play recently at all? No, because we had no bench except Reina and Bellingham. It was pretty much it. I mean, Hummels was there, but
yeah.
Oh man.
And they had a few chances right out of the gates the second half, and I think Terzic watched like 15 or so minutes of the second half, and I was like, Jesus, we need some changes. And brought on, the personnel you mentioned, Hummels and Bellingham, of course, which I was hoping we could rest Bellingham the entire game, but of course, I imagine Terzic is probably sitting there biting his nails going like, I don't know if we're going to pull this one out or not. So he's going to bring on Jude, and of course, he's going to be an engine, and Bellingham, and Reina came on slightly after him, and those two alone were like, we'll just 2v10 everyone.
Well, you saw Bellingham push way up too.
Yeah.
Because we still had Chan and Özcan in the middle, and playing that 4-2-3-1. He at first he went into that like 10 role, and he was way up the pitch, and obviously that's how we got the goal with Reina. Maybe they were rotating a little bit, but that was, interesting to see, I guess. But it cool. I liked it, but at the same time, like I understand if we need to have him be more of an 8 or a 6 at times. But it was interesting seeing him like get up the pitch more. And obviously that's how we got the penalty, but.
Yeah, both of them, Bellingham and Reina, were some of the very few bright spots of this game. Reina was looking very, very solid. It's funny how like when he comes on and immediately, of course, when Bellingham pushes up him as well, but everyone around him, it's like, wow, they're nothing compared to Reina at the moment.
Yeah.
The attacking quality that he has compared to really everyone else in that front line of Malen and Hazard all game, who are completely ineffective.
Well, just his ability, because we have the guys like Adeyemi and Malen who will like to run at someone and you try to use their pace and speed, and not necessarily always have control or like, but he's just someone who can control it through the park and just looks incredible.
Yeah, he's so elegant on the ball, and I love the way Reina can use his body too, and not the sense that like he's physical, but just the way that he can like. I remember like one of the first big plays that I really mentioned or realized whenever he linked up with Holland, it was against Paris a few years back, and we were at home. And just the way that Reina can like instantly turn with the ball and just open up play and immediately just have options, and he has that vision, which we were lacking in against Berlin, to really get drive the ball forward and put it into dangerous areas and create some chances. So
yeah, I think the vision is what separates him from a lot of the other young players, Malen or Adeyemi, who kind of just put their heads down and run. Yeah. And then he looks up and he knows what he can do. Even seeing someone in front of him, like he knows what to do, and then he can make the passes if we need to. And oh man, he's just.
And speaking of Malen, he's been so goddamn disappointing. And we talked about him again last week, but man, this would be a game. We were talking about him exploding versus a Division 3 side, and this would be a team Division 2 side to really go out and put on a performance. But man, he's so predictable with his dribbles. It's crazy. It's always going to be a ball roll followed by a quick scissor and then a cut in. And it's the exact same thing pretty much every time. And if he's close to goal, he can have those quick slap shots. But even the shots that he had yesterday were not great. The one that he tried to go far post, he was like using the inside of a foot, which of course is going to have the ball bend the other way. And it almost went out looking like it was going to be a throw in at first. And it's like, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating because, of course, the money we spent on him and the need for someone up top right now to actually just hold their own weight, or pull their own weight, excuse me, and provide these attacking options. Malen just does not look like it's it whatsoever.
What did you think of Hazard's game?
Pretty much the same.
Yeah, because I just who do you play? No one has really grabbed it. I would say Reina in his chances, but also he can play a different role. But it's just like the injuries is what's killing us. Like people aren't playing enough because they're injured to have someone come in and really take that position and be like, I'm the starter. This is why you need to start me. Everyone's just been a bit mediocre.
Yeah, mediocre is the word, man. Hazard was just not good.
I thought Brandt played pretty well.
He wasn't bad.
His touch was on, and he had some really great passes. I don't know why he came off. I get if Reina's, and maybe it's a rest thing, but I get if Reina's going to play that 10 role, or Bellingham kind of did for a little bit. I get that, but I would have rather had him go out wide than keep the other guys on. But
and then of course Adeyemi came on as well and got himself sent off relatively quickly. He
stopped the goal though.
Yeah, he did, but man, that he's not doing well either. Honestly, I mean, I'm going to give him more slack than Malen because he's been here for like not even a few months now. But I'm really hoping he's not going to be just a regen of just another disappointment in Malen because, again, I feel like they're pretty similar players, and we've talked about their faults before. But, yeah, I mean, Adeyemi was very disappointing as well, and it's a shame.
This has nothing to do with players, if you're okay to move on a little bit. But what was up with this pitch? It was terrible. Did you notice like how it was just falling apart?
I didn't notice anything too drastic with it, but I guess I wasn't.
Like players were. I mean, if you didn't notice it, maybe I was just making a big deal out of it. But I felt like players were falling all over the place. I think Schlotterbeck fell in the first like 10 seconds when they passed the ball back to him off the kickoff. He like slipped passing it forward, and I had a flashback to Kobel slipping, and I was like, oh no, we're gonna have another goal from a slip. And then just players were slipping everywhere, and the field, like on some close-ups, like there were so many like divots and holes in the grass that were just getting torn up. Like it was in terrible shape. And then even when they had the pitch invader, granted this dude's not wearing cleats,
I did see that. I did,
but he like runs on the pitch and is running at
slip.
Kobel and just slips and basically slide tackles.
Right,
Kobel.
yeah, I was about to say right before he got to him too, and Kobel was like, okay, yeah,
Anyways,
I did see horrendous. That was funny. Yeah, I mean. Another very poor performance despite the win. I mean, very little cohesion. Our attacking quality in general is pretty shocking most times in recent weeks, and we are completely relying on individual brilliance. Looks like there's very little idealism for Terzic really in the way that he sets up and everything like that, and which is a little concerning. I keep saying that I really hope he's taking the time outside of these games to learn from his mistakes, and it still looks like he is not. We're still incredibly vulnerable defending all set pieces of all kinds, and we cannot seem to build really any sort of momentum again. After these big results, you're expecting us to go and pick up some form, but it's just very regressive at the moment.
Yeah, I want to run through stats real quick because I know there are some people, especially people on Twitter, who will not watch a game and then they just look at the stats and they like to just be judgy off that. But the beautiful thing I think about soccer is like the stats are kind of out the door. For some games, you can watch the game and it tells a completely different story.
Yeah.
For instance, total shots, Hannover had 14, we had 18. Big chances, according to the app I'm looking at. Big chances, they had 2 and Dortmund had 3, which seems nuts because I would count every single save that Kobel made as a big chance. And then big chances missed, 2 and 2. Shots off target, they had 4, we had 9, and shots on target, they had 7, we had 6. All those were amazing saves by Kobel, and all of our shots on target, besides the goals, were probably just right at the keeper.
Yeah.
So those stats are, like, watching the game, it did not feel like that at all.
No.
And I don't think it was, you can't just look at those stats. Like, they should have won this game based on the chances they had and the ones that we had. Like, it was just nuts.
If it weren't for Kobel, we would have lost this game easily. Yeah. And again, I cannot get enough of the man. He is such a solid keeper. To have a bounce back like that in just a matter of days, not even a calendar week, but days, and put on that kind of a performance is incredible. So I was not worried about him really at all after the Berlin game. I mean, of course, it was very disappointing and it sucked to see him, have those kind of errors, but I was not worried that it was going to, become any sort of like a regular thing or anything like that. And last thing I wanted to say about the Hannover game too was, of course, another surprise injury in Meunier, who will miss the remaining matches until the World Cup due to a broken cheekbone that he suffered during that cup match.
I want to be optimistic. I want to be optimistic and say like he might still be able to train. Obviously not with players, and I feel bad if he has to miss the World Cup. It's weird how did you read any more? Like, is he going to miss the World Cup?
I don't know. I didn't read that he's going to miss the World Cup, but he's definitely not going to be back with us.
I understand he's not going to play with us,
after.
and I'd feel terrible if he would be missing the World Cup because they almost didn't even call us a foul. I think they kind of called the play because he was down, and it's nuts. Well, on the replay, Taylor Twellman and the other commentator were like, "Oh, there wasn't even contact." I was like, "Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
he got elbowed in the face, and then his cheekbone's broken."
Yeah.
But I mean, with that injury, I mean that's better than a muscle injury or something. I mean, depending on who you ask. But it's like that's something he could possibly still be active in the next month. I'd feel so bad if he has to miss a World Cup. And again, but the real scenario is we don't have depth.
I was just about to say that, and as of, we're recording this on the 20th, but as of the 18th, Terzic said Marius Wolf is still struggling with the consequences of his infection, and he will not be available for us for that cup match, of course, and he's still having some physical discomfort. Of course, we're recording this on a Thursday, so by tomorrow morning, you will hear updates online from the press conference before our game against Stuttgart, and hopefully everybody keep your fingers crossed and say your prayers. We can have Wolf back for this game, because if not, we're looking at, unless we want to play Sule right back, but those players need a rest too. We're looking at Paslak. So.
I don't think he was terrible.
No, I don't want to see Paslak.
I didn't think he was terrible in the few minutes he came on. Granted, they dropped off a lot at the end of this game. I know they had that chance obviously where they got the red card where Adeyemi, but it seemed like those last stoppage time, it seemed like they just kind of dropped off completely. So it's great that Sule's been playing that, and he's played it a couple times, and I think he's looked decent. He doesn't give us as much running forward, although he had that one, he had that run up through the middle where he created two different 1-2 passes, and was like, dude, how this just comes out of nowhere. I was like, I like seeing that. Obviously, he doesn't give us as much going forward, but he's solid in the back, so it's nice to have that option. But the downside is, those are our three center backs.
Yeah. And
then we don't have depth in that position.
Yeah, it never ends. And we've been saying this for a calendar year now.
Taylor Twellman.
Yeah. Did we want to preview Stuttgart first, or do the Twitter questions?
Let's do Twitter questions first.
Let's do it. The first one is from Chris, our good friend Chris from St. Louis. What additions are needed in the winter window? Another mid and left back? I feel like you may have mentioned this already, but seems like worth asking again. Yeah, it obviously depends on the budget. Dortmund are not big spenders to begin with, let alone in the January transfer window. We're usually not making much waves of anything. But you know who I've been thinking in the past few weeks who we could maybe, I doubt it happened in January, but we could look into the summer, is Castagna from Leicester City. He can play literally anywhere on the back line. He can play both wings, just like Wolf as well, and he could play center mid. He's on a Leicester City side that are struggling immensely, and I imagine they're probably going to need to offload some players for some money next year, depending on where they finish. And we could snatch him up for a really solid fee, I would imagine. And he's also not playing a lot, so maybe, I don't know if he's being fancied a lot at the moment, but I think that could be someone we could at the very least look into. I watched him play for Leicester his first season a good amount, and he was all over the pitch every game. So again, someone who's incredibly versatile, who's got a good work rate, who's really good on the ball, on both sides of the ball as well, and defensively and offensively, he's pretty solid in my opinion. And again, I think it can be pretty cheap. So, yeah. That would, of course, just be me. And I'm imagining we'll probably get no one in the January window unless maybe we could just pull some sort of money out of somewhere and we can reinvest in it. Like Chris was mentioning, I would hopefully be another left back. That's what I'd probably do. If not, a center mid.
Yeah, we did mention it a little bit last week because we were talking about wingers and everything. And yeah, I think now, especially with Meunier going down, and I think if we could find someone, just a fullback who could play both sides, because that's what we need.
Yeah.
And possibly more of a left back because we do have Wolf.
Yeah.
If he's good. I think that's honestly the most important, because as we're playing more games, those are the guys who, how we play should be running more than anyone else. So you think that they would need a bit of a rest or rotation, and we just don't have the rotation there. So I think that would be a priority if we can get anything. Another center mid wouldn't hurt. Maybe someone who's versatile in the midfield too, but yeah.
I really think Castagna would be that guy again. And he's also played in a bunch of different systems too. He's played in the back three for Leicester as a center back, weirdly enough. And again, he's also played on as both wing backs and higher up the field too. So, you could plug him in really wherever and during the never-ending injury crisis. Another one here from Poppy, or P Duncan 55, who asked, do you think Bellingham will stay for another season? And right now, no. It sucks to say, but right now, if we don't really get our act together in the coming few weeks or I don't know. If we don't get any sort of results in the next few weeks or so, it's going to be a really steep hill for us to get any sort of accomplishments towards the end of the season. And I just don't imagine, I guess, Bellingham wanting to do another year around of him trying to carry 10 other players around him. But I'm hoping I'm wrong, but that's just my take. What do you think?
At this rate, no. And I'm going to tie in another Twitter question to this because I think this will link up a bit. But maybe a replacement. I hope they already have the other Bellingham locked in, Job. If we could sign him, that'd be great. Just slot him in there. I think he's a little more attacking. But I mean, that'd be nice. And I know, well, shout out to Poppy, who also has a literal photo with Job. That's her profile picture.
That's wild.
So if the other Bellingham wants to come in, that'd be great. But I don't know, at this rate, Jude might be telling his younger brothers, like, nah, man, maybe don't go there if things are falling apart.
If things continue to fall apart like that, yeah.
But so the other question to tie into this is from Michael, who says, just for personal interest, can you touch on any discussion about sacking Terzic? He says, I don't want them to at all, but we love to quickly blame the manager rather than looking at the team build in the front office. So we did talk about Terzic before, and I think or last week maybe. I want to give him, I want to build a project, and I think that's the idea, but who knows what they're going to do, and maybe they'll just figure out. I think it's better to let him work and give him time and let him build something than to just try to bring in another manager. Because what I really want to talk about is like the seriousness of the club and what are their sporting goals. And this was kind of a topic, I think Stefan from, not Stefan Busco, but Stefan from the Gegenpressing podcast talked about Dortmund. Like, is Dortmund just, I mean, people have been debating this for a long time, but is Dortmund just like, is their goal to sell young players or is it to actually win something? And I think his argument was, if you look at what they're doing, then their goal is to just sell young players. And now, like, they're just, all right, well, we're going to sell Bellingham for 100 million plus. But I think that's a valid thing to look at. And I think this plays into the Terzic, like fire him or find someone else. I want to have faith that they are building something when you look at the signings we made over the summer. And I know when we made the signings over the summer, we were really excited. And of course, we're like, we're going to win the league. Like, we're all hyped because these are good signings coming in. But then you have to be realistic, and that's what we're getting hit with now. It's like, it's not going to change that quickly.
Yeah, of course not. But at the same time, too, I mean, not to really just put the blame elsewhere, but I mean, we did not expect to have our injury crisis follow over an entire summer either. You know, I mean, I figured by August we would have most people back, but man, we were struggling. We're still struggling to get people back in the team. And once one person goes in, another two go out. Yeah.
Back to the signings though, and I guess the projection's not the right word, but I guess the goals of the club, do you think with Kel and these signings coming in, do you think that's more of a play to try to build something and grow? Because I don't think Sule is someone that they're trying to sell to a Premier League club.
No.
Schlotterbeck, possibly, because he's still so young, but we could still get a good 4 or 5 years out of him.
I honestly think Schlotterbeck is someone we will keep for a very long time. I feel like he's going to be someone who's going to be a Dortmund player for maybe the majority of his career. I mean, I don't know if that's too unrealistic to say, but I really do feel like a lot of these signings this summer from Kale were players that we're looking to actually keep and not just offload in a year or two. I mean, Adeyemi is the same way. I mean, I know he's been disappointing, but he does look like someone who wants to be here and stay here.
I'm not so sure about Adeyemi.
You don't think so?
Just because he's so young, and there's like maybe a couple years, but maybe he'll be looking for a move. But Schlotterbeck, I could see both ways. I think he could be someone who stays a long time. But say we get like 5 years out of him and then he goes somewhere else, like that's also a possibility just because he's so young.
Yeah.
But I think his upside is so much and we can get so much out of him for a long time. But Özcan, that is a signing that's going to stay. I like what I feel. And then Aller, granted we haven't been able to see him, but him too, like he's not a longevity signing because he might not have as many years if he comes back, but it's not like he's coming here to get a next step to something else. And I think over the summer we did make those signings that are for Dortmund and Dortmund's future, not just to get a paycheck. And so I want to be optimistic and say there is a shift happening. We probably talked about that over the summer too. I think when they made the Sule signing, that's what we talked about. We talked about making a big signing to win stuff, to make us better and not just to develop someone. So I think, I don't know, I want to be optimistic.
I want, and to tie it back into the original question about Terzic, I too am really hoping that we can stick with someone and actually try to build something, because we right now are just a constant merry-go-round of like, he's not going to work, and then throw someone else in here, and then there's going to be a lot of putting wrenches in our momentum, and we can't really stick to any sort of philosophy, and the players get frustrated, and then you just kind of repeat. But at the same time, I am concerned that, again, Terzic is not really taking his mistakes seriously and learning from them. And I mean, of course, this was a result, thankfully, that we got, and we're going to advance in the cup. But I was thinking after the Berlin game, like, man, if we get knocked out of the Pokal, tie or lose to Stuttgart, and then get wrecked by City, and then the next week it's the same thing, I don't know if he's going to be employed too much longer. And I'm not saying after the Hannover game it's completely out of the woods yet. And I'm not even saying this is something that I would favor. I'm just coming from like a perspective of how the board might act. But hopefully that's not the case. I'm just hoping in the next month or so we can get some good results. Or I wasn't even going to say necessarily like great performances. Hopefully we can get good performances, but also just good results and just like rest for the winter break, and give Terzic some time to really try to build out some things with his philosophy, because man, he's struggling a lot.
Yeah, and I think we've said it before. Maybe I said it when we talked about Terzic last time, where it's like, One week I'm going to be like, yeah, get him out of here. The next week I'm going to be like, no, we got to build something. And it's probably going to be like that the whole season or the whole time he's here. And I hope it's what I'm more set on is like, let him build something and give him time, because I feel like things can be, you can bring in those managers who can turn something around, but you have to bring in the right one. And I don't think they haven't done that yet. Yeah, and they haven't made the right appointments to do anything close to that.
I don't want Terzic out of here yet. I'm someone who's still going to back him. We have 7 games left until the break. Some of them are very much winnable. Again, starting with Stuttgart this weekend at home, but we still have, you have Bochum, and they're finishing out the Champions League against Copenhagen too. It's at least we're not ending against City or away at Sevilla or anything like that. So. I'm hoping Terzic can really learn from his mistakes and pick up some good results here, build some momentum, and again, just recoup and recover for this whole winter break and come out strong the second half of the season, which we never really seem to do. As even if we do build momentum in the fall, we just slowly fade out as Bayern kicks it into gear in the spring, and the titles or the league's over by like March or something. So, I'm really hoping that's not the case, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, do you want to preview and move forward?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we have Stuttgart this weekend back at home. Stuttgart picking up some good results since appointing Wimmer just last week. They've had 2 games since firing their previous manager, Matarazzo. So another team that's got that quote-unquote new management or new manager buff. Stuttgart are tied for second in the league for successful tackles per match, just behind Bayern. And they've also, for those, I guess, who haven't paid too much attention to Stuttgart, they also recently signed Zagadou. So he just started against Berlin the previous week, and I'm imagining he's going to start again, and it will be a little bit of a homecoming for him.
You have any score predictions or lineup predictions or anything?
Lineup predictions? I have no idea. Sure. Yeah, I don't want to think about the lineup, honestly. That makes me sad. Score? Jesus Christ. I keep saying I'm going to be an optimist.
It's hard. Well, this is what happens. Like we have a really low week, even coming off a win. Like we have a low week, and then I just expect us to lose 3-0. Honestly, no matter who we're playing, it's going to be the worst. And then we might come out and play fantastic, and then my hopes are going to get high again, and then we're going to
just crash,
lose 6-0 to a double hat trick from Erling Haaland on Tuesday. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Hopefully, we have some sort of response again. Back at home, Reina's back. 2-1 us.
I feel like we always predict 2-1.
Do we?
It's like my go. I think I've done some 3-1s here and there, but that was what I was.
Some ties too. I know.
That's me being optimistic, but thinking we're still going to give up a little bit. It's not going to be a great game. Tight 2-1. I haven't watched a lot of Stuttgart but obviously they have the bounce in their last 2 games. I mean, it was Bochum, and Bochum haven't been great. And then Bielefeld was that was a Pokal game.
Yeah.
Who won? So they won 4-1 and 6-0.
That game against Bochum was their first win in the Bundesliga this year.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a chance maybe they don't. I don't know. I want to be optimistic and say we're going to win, but at this rate, it's hard for me to be optimistic. Do you think? I guess we'll learn more by the time this podcast is out. We'll probably learn more about Royce and Wolf. Do you think Reyna starts though?
I do think Reyna starts. Yes.
I hope he does. I'm still like, I don't want him to get injured, and I still feel like they're probably going to ease him into things. But I hope he does. I don't know if he will, but.
Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, unless something comes up in training, but I think he looked really, really solid against Hannover. Again, is one of the very few positives of that game, and he played a good amount too. So it's not like he came in against Berlin in like the 80th minute. So
yeah, right back. Do you think we'll play
Sule or
Paslak, or depending on Wolf? But at this point, I'm expecting Wolf to not be ready.
Yeah, I don't think Wolf might be ready either. I'm imagining we'll probably play Sule at center back, right back, especially with Hummels that was resting most of the game against Hannover. We'll probably play those 3 center backs in a back 4.
And then if you miss it, of course, Stuttgart is this Saturday, 9:30 Eastern time. Next Tuesday is our home match against Manchester City back in the Champions League. It's at 3 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. The Holland homecoming.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about it?
Not great. At the moment, not great.
I'm excited. I think I said it when we got matched up with Man City. It's going to be a cool... I hope it's a good reception. I know things kind of ended sour just because people were butthurt, I think, at the end of last season. That was something that made me so mad, like people just like turning on him so quickly. And I don't like Man City, and I don't like watching him, but I try to watch all their games just because I love watching Haaland still, and he's been doing just insane things. So I'm excited, and I hope he gets a nice reception. I just hope that reception doesn't turn into him scoring another hat trick, which it might be, because he's been doing that a lot.
So I was going to say we shut him out for most of the game away. I mean, but again, he's inevitable. So
who's the Marvel bad guy? He's like that.
Thanos?
Yeah. Is that one of his lines? I'm inevitable.
Yeah, inevitable.
Probably.
Yeah.
Did you see the interview? I don't know if we talked about it after the last game, but we might have talked about it, so I apologize. But it was quite a few weeks ago. But after the Dortmund game, the interviewer at the end was like, "Yeah, they did a pretty good job stopping you." And he's like, "But they didn't stop me. I still scored." It's like, you're right. Yep, you're right. All right. So, that's next Tuesday, 3 p.m. kickoff. Stuttgart this Saturday, 9:30 a.m. kickoff. Those games Bundesliga games on ESPN, Paramount Plus for Champions League. Carver, anything else? Got anything else?
That's it.
Hopefully we're not as sad next week, but we probably will be.
We probably will be.
All right. Thanks for hanging out. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram and get all those links, the description of this episode, and find everything. If you want to reach us, email, you can find that too. And then our website is thebvbpodcast.com, and we will see you later.
See ya.